So let's talk about special needs shelters for a moment. You'll notice on line 10 and on line 16, they both say Burt's National Guard Armory. However, line 16 says special needs, and if you look, the shelter numbers are different. They may have two shelters, two very separate individual shelters on the same site. They could be in two different parts of the building, or they could be in two buildings at the same site. Now, the special needs shelter will most likely be run by an outside organization. So you'll notice that line 10 is listed as a partner shelter. Line 16 is listed as an independent shelter. So when we look at those, we need to make sure we're getting two very separate counts. And most of the time, that special needs shelter will either have its own phone or we will get counts from the EOC. So when we look at those counts and we look at the populations, we can see they're very different populations. The special needs shelter has a much smaller population. Now, that doesn't mean that there can't be some special needs people counted in the main shelter. It just means that these are particularly special needs. They could be maybe a nursing home has evacuated to that shelter and they are put up in one section of the shelter completely separate from everybody else. And they have nurses and aides and all this stuff. Or maybe a school for special needs people has evacuated to that shelter and somebody has said, okay, we're going to separate these guys out and attend to their special needs. That doesn't mean that Bob, who's in a wheelchair, has to go over to that special needs shelter. He may be fully functional on his own at home. Just because he's in a wheelchair doesn't mean that he needs to go to the special needs shelter. So he may still be in the general population shelter. The other thing that I want to talk about is making sure your data is accurate. So here's an example. We have PM, 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 PM. All of a sudden there's an AM. Obviously, we know we did the count in the PM, but we want to make sure this data is correct and accurate because let's say the last time we actually got a hold of that shelter was 11 o'clock in the morning. We could not get a hold of them for this count. We may actually put over here, used last known count due to inability to reach shelter. And, maybe they've been cut off. There's no phones. The only way to get in touch with them is by radio, and the radio folks haven't gotten the radio out to them yet. There could be any number of reasons. Maybe they have bad cell phone reception. Maybe cell phone towers are down. I don't know. The other thing is when you look at names of facilities, just because they look similar, like primary and high school, they have the same rice cake, school. Don't go too quickly that you're skipping over where you're calling. Okay, make sure you're putting that data in the right place because it is very important that we have accurate data. The other thing that I want to mention is the type of shelter. Let's say you call Bob's First Church and he says, yeah, we did away with that whole Red Cross thing. We're just running this show all by ourselves. We had a disagreement with the Red Cross people. Well, they obviously still have a good contact phone because we're talking to them. We are going to list them as an independent shelter because they've, for whatever reason, severed their ties with the local Red Cross. And this does sometimes happen. And hopefully those fences can be mended later. But at this time, they've decided to be independent. Okay, we'll go ahead and change them to independent. We will verify that with our shelter lead, and then we will change that in NSS to match our DCT. So if we have firsthand knowledge, hey, this has changed from a managed to independent, or a managed to partner, or an independent to managed, or whatever, we're going to make sure that our DCT and NSS match up. Now we can change the type of shelter in NSS anytime we want to. So after the DR is over, if Bob decides he's mended his fences and he wants to go back to being a Red Cross managed shelter for the next DR, that's fine. We can change it. Not a big deal. But for this DR, we want to make sure that everything is accurate. I hope that I have answered your questions, and I hope that you have learned something from this. And if you have any questions, please speak to your lead.